everyone. I hope you are all staying healthy and doing great in your life. It's our lecture 1. I am your presenter Ismail and today our topic is characteristics and classification of living organisms. So let's start our topic. Firstly, we will talk about living organisms. Living organisms are those organisms that shows the properties of life. Properties of life include growth, reproduction, metabolism, development and adaptation to the environment. So any organism that exhibits these properties is called as living organism. Living organisms include human beings, animals, birds, insects, and other. Now I will discuss some characteristics of living organisms. Living organisms exhibit some special properties and characteristics that separates them from non-living things. Non-living things do not exhibit these characters. So there are 7 basic characteristics of living organisms: movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion and nutrition. So there is an acronym to remember all these 7 characteristics and it is Mrs. Gran. So it is a mnemonic through which you can remember these 7 basic characteristics of living organisms. Now I will discuss the definition and example of these characteristics. First, I will talk about the movement. What is movement? Movement is a state or any action of changing the position or place of an organism or any part of organism. So if human beings are living organisms, we can see that they can walk, jump, fly and swim. So these are the movements. Respiration is a chemical reaction that releases the energy from the breakdown of food substances within the cells of living organisms, and then the life functions and processes continue. Example of respiration include inhaling and exhaling the air. Now I will talk about sensitivity. Sensitivity is the ability to sense or detect any stimuli in external or internal environment of the organism, and then the organism make an appropriate response towards the change in the environment. Example of sensitivity include sense of taste, smell, touch and hearing. What is growth? Growth is an increase in the size and mass of living organism due to increase in the number of cells or size of cells, and both means increase in the size and number of cells. Examples include that plants show extensive increase in size and it's an example of growth. What is reproduction? Reproduction is an ability to produce new organisms or offsprings. For example, starfish reproduces through fragmentation. Fragmentation is a process in which an organism divides into fragments and each fragment develops into a new organism. Excretion is the removal of excessive amount of waste products of metabolism, toxic materials and other substances from the body of living organisms. Urine is an example of excretion. If I talk about the nutrition, it's a process of taking in the nutrients and other food substances for growth, reproduction, maintenance and management of diseases. Plants need light, water, carbon dioxide and ions, while animals require ions, organic compounds and water. For example, a healthy and well-balanced diet is an example of nutrition. Now we will discuss classification of living organisms, basic concept and use of classification system. Firstly, I will define the biological classification. It's a method by which biologists divide the organisms into groups and subgroups according to their structural similarities. Why there is a need to use the classification system? Because a large collection of different forms of organisms found on Earth. They range in complexity from small and simple bacteria to large and complex human beings. Everyone has its own way of life. And because of this huge diversity, it becomes very difficult to learn about the characteristics of each. So to study such a large collection, biologists classify the organisms into groups and subgroups. And for this purpose, they require some system. There are two systems of classification. One is the natural classification and other one is artificial classification. Natural classification is further based on two ideas, which is homologous structures and evolutionary relationships. What are the homologous structures? Homologous structures are the features of organisms that are similar in structure but look very different from each other and used for different purposes. For example, a horse front leg, human arm and bat's wing are homologous structures because they look similar in structure, having the same number and arrangement of bones but used for different purposes. So these are the homologous structures. What is the evolutionary relationship? It is a type of relationship among the organisms who share a common ancestor like grandparent and great-grandparent. They have some similarities in appearance because they have inherited some features from their grandparents. So if we talk about the example, as we have discussed earlier that horse's front leg, human arm and a bat's wing are homologous structure because they have the same number and arrangement of bones. So they probably evolved from a single type of structure that was present in a common ancestor million years ago. So this is the evolutionary relationship among. So now we will talk about artificial classification. Artificial classification is a method of ordering the organisms into groups based on the feature and characteristics that are non-evolutionary or non-genetic. For example, Linnaeus classified the plants on the basis of the number, arrangement, and fusion of sexual parts. So Linnaeus gave the artificial classification system. What are the aims of classification? But further we will discuss two terms, taxonomy and systematics. What is taxonomy? It's a branch of biology which deals with the classification, and systematics is a branch of biology that deals with the classification, but it also traces the evolutionary history of organisms. So the main aims of both of these branches are they determine the similarities and differences among the organisms so that the organisms can be studied easily. They find the evolutionary relationships among the organisms. Modern genetics provide another type of information to taxonomists. The similarities and difference in the DNA of two studied organisms can be used for getting idea about similarities and differences in their structure and functions. The sequence of bases in DNA and amino acids in proteins can be used as a more accurate mean of classification. Organisms which share a more recent ancestor means they are more closely related. These organisms have base sequence in the DNA that are more similar than those that share only a distant ancestor. Taxonomic hierarchy. The groups into which organisms are classified are known as taxonomic categories or taxa. Singular of taxa is taxon. The taxa form a ladder known as taxonomic hierarchy. So the hierarchical classification system is based on natural classification system, and it uses some common features shared by organism. All organisms are divided into 5 kingdoms. Prokaryotes, which include bacteria, protoctista, fungi, plants, and animals. So here is a diagram that shows this classification. Organisms are divided into prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are placed in kingdom Monera, while eukaryotic organisms are divided into two categories, unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular are placed in kingdom Protista, while multicellular are further divided into two categories, with cell wall and without cell wall. Without cell wall organisms are placed in Animalia, and with cell wall is further divided into two types, phototrophics and heterotrophics. Phototrophic are placed in kingdom Plantae, while heterotrophics are placed in kingdom Fungi. So this is the basic classification system. Kingdom is the largest taxon. So on the basis of similarities, each kingdom is further divided into smaller taxa. As we can see in the diagram that kingdom is divided into phylum. Phylum is a group of related classes. Phylum is divided into classes. A class is a group of related order. Class is divided into orders. Order is a group of related families, and family is a group of related genera, and genus is a group of related species. So the species consist of organisms that are similar. So members of lower taxon resemble more than do the members of higher taxon. So, the members of species are similar more than the organisms of genus, family, and order. Because the members of lower taxon resemble one another more than the members of higher taxon. So, kingdom is the largest taxon and the members of kingdom resembles least than the members of species. Okay, members of species have similarity more than the members of above taxa. Why we use taxonomic hierarchy? First, it helps the scientists to sort out the organisms in orders. Secondly, it helps them to identify new organisms by finding which group they will fit. Third, it's easier to study organisms when they are sorted in the groups. Now we will learn about the classification of humans and P. For humans, kingdom is Animalia, phylum is Chordata, class is Mammalia, order is Primates, family is Hominidae, genus is Homo, and species is H. sapiens. For P, kingdom is Plantae, phylum is Magnoliophyta, class is Magnoliopsida, order is Fables, family is Fabaceae, genus is Pisum, and species is P. sativum. What are species? Species is the basic unit of classification, but how we can define species? Species is a group of organisms which can interbreed freely among them and produce fertile offsprings, but they are reproductively isolated from all other such groups in nature. Each of the species has own structural, ecological and behavior characteristics. While we are defining species, we should consider the word in nature, because two organisms related to two different but closely related species can crossbreed under some artificial conditions. In such unnatural crosses, they produce offsprings which are infertile. For example, if a crossing occurs between a male donkey and a female horse, then it will result in the production of an infertile offspring, that is the mule. So, mule is an infertile offspring that produced as a result of crossing between a male donkey and a female horse. What is binomial nomenclature? Binomial nomenclature is the method of giving scientific names to living organisms. Binomial means scientific names of a species consist of two names. Bi means two and nomial means names. So the scientific name of a species consists of two names. The first name is the genus name and the second is the name of species. Binomial nomenclature is a system that was introduced by Swedish biologist Carolus Linnaeus in 1707 to 1778. So Carolus Linnaeus first adopted and introduced the system of binomial nomenclature, which is using rapidly and becoming popular. Many of his names are used today. What are the rules for binomial nomenclature? The first rule is that scientific names are printed in italics, like Homo sapiens. So when we handwritten these names, they are always underlined. Second rule is that first term is the generic name, which always begins with capital letter, while species name is never capitalized, even when derived from a proper name. So genus name will be capitalized while species name will never be capitalized. Scientific name is generally written in full when it is first used, but when several species from the same genus are listed, it may be abbreviated by just using an initial word genus. For example, in case of Escherichia coli, it becomes E. coli. What is the significance of binomial nomenclature? In biological research, common name cause many problems because different regions have different names for the same organisms. For example, blackbird is a word that we use for crow as well as for raven. To avoid all these confusions, organisms are given scientific names by using this system of binomial nomenclature. It is using widespread, and the value is that because it stabilizes the names. In binomial nomenclature, every species can be identified with just two names, two word name. One word is genus and second is species. Same name can be used all over the world. For example, onion is a common name, but for scientific name, onion is Allium cepa. For starfish, the scientific name is Asterias rubens, and for house crow, scientific name is Corvus splendens. Now we will discuss about some features of organisms in 5-kingdom classification system. It is a system that was introduced by Whittaker, but in 1988, Margulis and Schwartz modified the 5-kingdom classification system of Whittaker. They considered genetics along with the cellular organization and mode of nutrition. But they classified the organisms into same 5 kingdoms. The kingdoms are Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia. If we talk about the features of Kingdom Monera, then it includes prokaryotes, unicellular, but some may form chains, cluster or colonies of the cells. Most are heterotrophic but perform photosynthesis because they have chlorophyll in their cytoplasm. So there are two different kinds of organisms, bacteria and cyanobacteria. Kingdom Protista include eukaryotic unicellular organisms, simple multicellular organisms. There are three main types of protists. Algae are unicellular, colonial and simple multicellular. They resemble plant cell with cell wall and chlorophyll in the chloroplast. Simple multicellular means that they do not have multicellular sex organs and do not form embryos during their life cycles. Protozoans resemble animals whose cell lack chlorophyll and cell walls. Some protists are fungi-like. If we talk about the features of kingdom fungi, then kingdom fungi includes eukaryotic multicellular heterotrophs which are absorptive in their nutritional modes. For example, mushrooms. Most fungi are decomposers. They live on organic material, secrete some digestive enzymes and absorb small organic molecules formed by digestion by enzymes. Kingdom Plantae includes eukaryotic multicellular autotrophs. Plants are autotrophic in their nutritional mode. They make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. They have multicellular sex organs and form embryos during their life cycles. Mosses, ferns, and flowering plants are included in the kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Animalia includes eukaryotic multicellular consumers. Animals live mostly by ingesting food and digesting it within these special cavities. They lack the cell wall and show some movements. If we talk about distinguishing features of these five kingdoms, then here is a table that differentiate them. If we talk about the properties like nucleus, we can see that nucleus is absent in kingdom Monera but present in all other four kingdoms. Cell organization is mostly unicellular in kingdom Monera and Protista, but in kingdom Plantae and Animalia, cell organization is mostly multicellular. Fungi includes unicellular as well as multicellular. Cell wall is present in kingdom Monera and it is made up of peptidoglycan. Cell wall may be sometimes present in Protista, but it is absent in kingdom Animalia. In fungi, cell wall is present and made up of chitin, and in kingdom Plantae, cell wall is made up of cellulose. If we talk about nutritional class, then Monera are autotrophic and heterotrophic. In kingdom Protista, organisms are autotrophic and heterotrophic like kingdom Monera. Fungi are heterotrophic, Plantae include autotrophic and Animalia include heterotrophic. On the basis of mode of nutrition, kingdom Monera, absorption. In kingdom Protista, absorption and ingestion are the two modes of nutrition. In fungi, the mode of nutrition is absorption, and in kingdom Plantae, mode of nutrition is mostly absorption, but in kingdom Animalia, mode of nutrition is mostly ingestion. Examples of kingdom Monera are eubacteria, kingdom Protista are protozoa and algae. Examples of kingdom fungi are yeast, molds, mushrooms. Kingdom Plantae examples are mosses, ferns, flowers. And examples of kingdom Animalia are insects, birds and fish. So in this lecture we talked about the classification and characteristics of living organisms. I hope you have learned something from this lecture. Thank you for listening me.